Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus sees the return of BJ Blazkowicz, thick of neck and grumpy of disposition, ready to kick some serious buttock. Blazkowicz is back on board the Nazi killing train after getting a taste for it back in 1992's Wolfenstein 3D. While the series pretty much birthed the FPS genre, it has managed to avoid many of the features that we've come to expect in our shooters, for better and worse. Here are 6 things Wolfenstein 2 does differently. Whether it's Call of Duty, Battlefield, or Destiny, we've all accepted that prancing around in a hail of bullets is perfectly acceptable, until the edges of our screen start to turn red, presumably because of all the blood leaking from our faces into our eyeballs. That's the universal gaming signal that it's time to use a med pack or take cover. Pronto. While Wolfenstein 2 implements this to some degree, it's generally a few milliseconds before death reaches into your meaty vessel and plucks out your soul. Something that threw me off at first, but I hit my stride in no time. Okay, no, I didn't. I'm too set in my ways, and it was a BJ Bloodbath. You'll need to keep an eye on the health and armor meters if you want to stay alive. Or, you know, keep moving to stay out of Nazi gunfire like a normal person. Despite playing along with the notion that our bodies have Christ-like regenerative properties and that a bit of gauze can perform the work of a handful of skilled surgeons and 10 months of physical therapy, it's a given that our health bar goes up to 100 and that's that. Wolfenstein 2 is all about the buffs, something that was introduced in 2001's Return to Castle Wolfenstein and again in the New Order, and you'll pick up boosts for your health that will tip you well over the usual 100 HP. The effect is temporary, but it'll help you out in all manner of scrapes. The armor system is slightly different too, only replenishing when you find the appropriate pick-me-up. Sporadic shields aren't my particular cup of tea. I prefer to know where my limit is outright when it comes to taking bullets. Ferreting around for an additional buff that isn't that impressive seems like a waste of time when you're in a mad dash for the exit, but it does give you a bit of breathing room. Considering the speed at which you can go from hero to zero, we'll take whatever we can get to shore up the defenses of our bruised and battered bodies. We've walked the path of many a grizzled soldier, and whether we're grubbing around in the trenches or mowing down the bad guys in Modern Warfare, we very rarely get the opportunity to dual-wield weapons outside of the Wolfenstein series. BJ's burly arms are the only ones up to the task. For everyone else, it would throw off your aim and be ridiculously cumbersome, like trying to get all of your shopping into the house in one trip cumbersome. Don't try to be a hero. Dual-wielding pistols is normally about as much as we can handle, but BJ Blazkowicz laughed in the face of Call of Duty's pea shooters, brandishing a bulky Laserkraftwerk in one hand and a hefty Sturmgewehr in the other. That's German for guns. Accuracy be damned. Watch your enemies drown in a sea of lead and disintegrate in a laser beam all at the same time. The temptation to burst out of doorways spraying man and machine with hot lead was too much to resist, and it did not go well for me. BJ is not bulletproof, and you are most definitely meant to utilize every bit of cover at your disposal. If anything, it bolsters your confidence a little too much, like when your mum tells you that yes, that dress does suit you, and you sashay out of the house looking like a misshapen sausage. Just don't get sucked into thinking you're Mr. Big Balls and go on a rampage that will inevitably end in your demise, like I insisted on doing repeatedly. You're Mr. Average Size Balls, and they're still very fragile. Battling your way through the campaign with a preset loadout and switching out weapons for the more interesting looking drops from your foes is the only real way we get to experiment with the game's arsenal outside of the multiplayer. Popping a scope onto your weapon or extending the mag isn't a luxury usually afforded to us by the more popular AAA shooters. In Wolfenstein 2, you can access the weapons menu at any time to fritter away upgrade kits on a supercharge for your laser gun, a suppressor for your pistol, or armor-piercing rounds for your auto rifle. You can really go to town, unlocking all sorts of dastardly upgrades like a diesel-fueled grenade. It's sure to brighten up any Nazi gathering once you lob it into the middle of one. It's a liberating feature and a necessary one. Fighting oppressive regimes is hard. The front lines are not a cheerful place to be, and while titles like Bad Company have done their share of trying to lighten the mood with parodies of games like Metal Gear Solid and Gears of War, it's still pretty heavy stuff. As the FPS behemoths have become more cinematic in their story modes, they're kind of sucking the fun out of the senseless violence that made the genre so satisfying to play in the first place. Gravitas has its place, but a bit of comic relief never hurt anyone, for the most part at least. With Wolfenstein 2's huge cast of characters and hours of cinematics, we're sure to see more of the same irreverent humour that made the scrappy resistance fighters so lovable, like when Fergus's robotic hand crawled off and crushed that guy's skull. Or when I drank far too much and passed out in the middle of a raging argument. Why did you cut to the Wolfenstein 2 gameplay? Oh, no, that's what I meant too.
Never trust a man can't handle his wisdom.
As spectacular as modern day shooters look, they do get a bit samey after a while. When you've seen one guy in his mid-30s gunning people down, you've seen them all. BJ doesn't stray far from the cookie cutter protagonist, if anything he is the cookie cutter, but when it comes to level design, Wolfenstein 2 is a world away from its peers. The environments are elaborate and intricate, with a depth that isn't the norm for an FPS. The set pieces are steeped in the narrative of the game, from the city skylines, to the burning streets, to the propaganda posters on the walls. And running and gunning your way through them is made all the much more fun because of it. This series defined the FPS genre, and the influence it's had has shaped today's shooters. Wolfenstein 2 cherry-picks the best of what makes a shooter satisfying, like guns that pack a punch, and then goes one better, like letting you use 2 of them at the same time. Because why not? Why not include health buffs, or have BJ knock up a makeshift piece of armor from scrap? If you're coming off the back of any other series, you might be thrown off by the lack of visual cues as you hurtle towards death's door, but I'm fairly confident I'm in the minority of people who'll struggle with that. Either way, there's plenty more to look forward to when Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus launches on October 27th.